Good evening to our Crawford community, especially to our parents and our Crawford International students. I'm very honored to be introducing Maya Sudarkasa. We all know Maya from many years, and we really remember her really fondly. She's a proud Crawfordian, and I'm just going to give a little bit of what she has achieved and her successes. She is currently an incoming history PhD student at the University of Michigan. So Maya is with us tonight from the States, and again I say we are so blessed to have her here. Her undergrad degree was from Vassar College in 2018, and she had a double major in history and French and minored in Afrikaner studies. Her research intersects the contemporary Western restorative justice movement and the long-standing American Black liberation struggle. Partner TC. I'm sure many of Maya's teachers will be very happy to hear that. And she has also worked as an administrative assistant and project coordinator for 2 esteemed professionals in the nonfiction film industry. Maya is interested in the integrity of storytelling, the power of equity in education, and the dignity of all people, beginning with the most marginal. We are very proud to introduce to you a Crawford alumni who graduated from Crawford International Center in 2013. Over to you, Maya. Thank you for being with us.
Okay, hello everyone. Thank you for that introduction, Ms. Panau and Ms. Donald. It's so overwhelming to be here with you all tonight. I guess it's, evening your time, it's afternoon my time. Warm greetings to everyone, sincerely. Also a specific shout out to all my teachers, all the faculty, all the staff who know me, who poured into me, who were a part of developing me. Thank you for everything you've done, and you did a wonderful job because so many things have happened for me, to me, since my Crawford experience. So, I also want to greet everyone else in the space, students, parents, the international community, that's amazing. And I want to lift up everyone in South Africa specifically. I've been paying attention to some of the recent developments. I just want to lift you up during some of these difficult times. I'm just thinking about you from afar. So just to recap and introduce myself, my name is Maya. I am one of 5 Sudarkasa students or children who went through the Crawford schooling system. We are all over doing our thing in the United States, and we really do have Crawford to thank for many reasons. As was mentioned, I'm the class of 2013. Then I went on to Vassar College, which was my undergraduate schooling, graduated in 2018. Then I went on to serve with City Year Washington, D.C., which was teaching, as was mentioned, graduated that in 2020. And now I am starting my PhD program in Michigan. And it's just been a roller coaster. But basically, I've been invited here today to share my experience, the trajectory from Crawford to here, to help any 9th grade students who are choosing subjects. If you're interested in history, if you haven't considered history, I can help to illuminate some of the reasons why it might be a good idea. And then everybody else, 10th through 12th, as you're getting ready to go on your journey and prepare for tertiary education, if that's your path, I can help, hopefully, to help you put some of the stepping stones in place. I want to just quickly say, I am calling in from Ann Arbor, Michigan. This is the unceded land of the Odawa, Ojibwe, Buddha Wadami, and Wyandotte indigenous communities. I use she, her pronouns. And for those who might have a visual impediment, I am a dark-skinned African-American woman with long brown braids, wearing an olive green V-neck t-shirt in front of a red brick wall with some pictures. Okay, so my plans, if I didn't mention, after this PhD experience will be to probably do maybe a postgraduate fellowship of some sort, and then eventually become a full-time professor with the goal, of course, of securing tenure, well, you know, down the line. So that's my plan. And so now I will kind of touch on, I guess, the journey through Crawford and how literally how I got here. So Crawford did a wonderful job of preparing all the students who wanted to apply abroad in the latter 2 years of the high school experience. So there was application preparation, SAT prep, you know, helping with literally put our materials together. So from printing the letters to putting them in the envelopes, I remember very viscerally having a lot of support to, you know, finish that experience. Letters from the principal, you know, to explain any differences in the systems. Of course, South Africa, the education system, it varies from America where I was applying. Others went to the UK. And so they're, you know, having basically writing from the senior of the school to break down some of the particulars of our school really helped to make a case for us coming in from so far. And then just encouragement, you know, wanting us to succeed, being there to cheer us on, having meetings, you know, pulling us out of class or meeting at different times to huddle together and, you know, track our progress. That was all super, super, super amazing and a necessity, honestly, for me so far away. I also will say a lot of the general skills that we were building in school every day were useful for my studies coming over here. So discipline is huge at Crawford. You know, communication across distance, you know, across difference, right? Thinking about intercommunication between cultures and, you know, people who are different from you, that helps, right? When you're straddling continents and moving far away, meeting all kinds of people. General personal expression and articulation is something that's encouraged at Crawford. So being able to express yourself. And again, this shows up in your essay, your entrance essay, and any conversation you have, if there's an interview involved with, you know, your kind of college journey, anything like that, it helps. Passion is fostered at Crawford. You need to love what you're doing. I mean, that's a personal bias that I have, but I really feel like there was so much passion and encouragement for people to do what they like, do what they're interested in at Crawford. And that, of course, shows up when you choose to pursue a specialization. Determination. I know that Crawford students are some of the most determined people that I've ever known. And it's encouraged, and it's, again, made a standard. This is just the standard, is to be a Crawfordian, you had to have these qualities, which again paid off. Ambition, the sky's the limit. Globalism and internationalism, I said that already, but just basically you know, the world is open to you, and it's encouraged, you know, for us to go far, spread our wings, all that stuff. And then professionalism, that's the last thing I'll say. You know, I remember being very young in the Crawford schooling system and just having a sense of professionalism and integrity about my work, a work ethic, just having my head on my shoulders from a really young age, and then just developing that throughout. It shows up, you know, when you now have to go into the world and represent yourself, it shows up. So all of those skills I'm just lifting up to say, you know, you might not even know the ways that the school is preparing you, but it helps. Okay. Then to be a well-rounded person, right? It's not just academics, it's leadership, there's sports, there's service that's encouraged. I mean, you know, you can really run the gauntlet with your talents, and that is also an amazing quality to show up and be well balanced, and be able to juggle many different types of things, to be multifaceted. All of these are characteristics that are really looked on, you know, fondly by institutions anywhere, and any kind of a job, any kind of a school, any kind of an opportunity that might be looking for candidates. values that kind of a thing, when you can excel in more than one sphere at the same time, which I think was very regular at Crawford. Okay, so I want to talk about quickly the disconnect between what I thought college would be and then what college was. And yeah, I mean, again, Crawford did a great job to support and to kind of illuminate as best as they can. But granted, we were on the other side of the world trying to keep up with this really competitive, fast-paced American schooling system. And I want to just say I didn't know as much as I did know, again, with all the information sessions and all the resources that we did have. And even being an American, you know, it's ridiculous. You know, even being American, I was still so out of touch with what was happening and all the dimensions to tertiary education. So in America, for one, I'll only speak on that experience. There are so many different types of colleges you can go to. If you want to go to college, it doesn't have to just be the college you see on TV, okay? They're so different. You know, there's 4-year institutions, there's 2-year institutions, there's online school, there's community college versus private institutions. There's, you know, all kinds of programs, liberal arts schools versus, you know, other disciplined schools. And so there's HBCUs, which are historically Black colleges and universities, which that they have their own history and their own kind of importance and significance in society. It's like, I didn't know, I guess, the vastness of the type of experience I could have chosen or curated. However, I ended up going to a 4-year liberal arts college, Vassar College, upstate New York. Had a great time. It was perfect for me. I just remember showing up and being like, thinking that I would see the thing on TV. And of course, it was vastly different. So I caught up. Of course, I caught up. All of these gaps I was able to catch up just from being there. I also had a limited knowledge on the financials, right? Like the financial aid and what does the funding look like for college? Just how does it really work? The intricacies of it. And of course, you can't know most of that until you arrive. That's the same with university, I'm sure, going to UCT, going to WITS, wherever you choose to go. Same thing in South Africa. Some of the intricacies of it you won't know until orientation or until you begin. But I think for me, that was also really overwhelming, was coming so far and then like not really knowing how any of it works. And so having to take out loans or having to apply for grants or do certain things to pursue funding. Some of that was, of course, unclear in high school. And then also just for me, I am, again, American, but I hadn't lived in America any of my life. So I had to kind of learn also the politics of the country, right? And the cultures around me and what it meant to be in the Northeast versus the South versus the West Coast. You know, there's all these different variations of, you know, kind of socialization depending on where you are. And that's normal anywhere you go. But I think that was also a disconnect that I just wasn't aware of. And so again, as I was there, living my life, years were going by, I was making friends, I was growing my community, all this stuff was able to fill in. But those are some of the things that I'm saying to you all well in advance, as early as you're comfortable, to think about, just to consider, right? Like, how might the school differ from the way that I perceive the kind of education that I might have seen on TV? I mean, that's just, you know, a question to ask. And then how can I fill in and nuance some of those expectations or imaginings? And so research is paramount. Don't shy away from it. It's hard because you're just online, you know, but research. And if you have the resources, I also would suggest a visit, you know, go out there if you can. Of course, that can be extreme, depending how far you wish to go. But for anywhere you go, a visit would be, you know, really awesome and helpful for you to put together the experience you'll be having for the period of time that you sign on for. And also then you can talk to the people who are there and they can, you know, give you information and you build the connection well in advance. So that's one thing I would kind of suggest. When it comes to history and people going into humanities, so it's kind of called humanities in the umbrella. There are some skills that I think are useful. Of course, you want to have really good grades in the area of specialization. Of course, this also is for anything. If it's medicine, it's the same thing. If it's law, you want to, you know, steer off in that direction anyway. But having kind of competitive performance in the subject. So I loved history, and I was pushing to really have good grades in history. And then same thing in college, like had to keep a good GPA, grade point average in that course, of course, helps. But then having work and volunteer experience. So you all, you know, service again was encouraged. And so having like outside opportunities, internships, programs, any experience that is, you know, outside of the classroom in that area, first of all, will just help you to figure out how, if you can see yourself in this space for real, like working in that space. And it's like trying on shoes, you know, it actually is useful for you. But then secondly, of course, it looks good on a resume, looks good on a CV. And you have a lot to talk about, you know, when you think about, okay, this is the reason I made this choice. You'll have a lot of things that helped you come to that conclusion. Awards certainly help. That's highly encouraged at Crawford. So everybody has awards at Crawford. So, you know, push to do that internally and externally, certificates, awards, recognition in that way. That's great. And then mentorship is huge. And so I think I'm naturally the kind of a person who would cultivate relationships with my teachers. I am a future educator, so I really did want to kind of establish personal relationships in order to watch and mimic and grow with my educators. That might not be the case for everybody, but I definitely would suggest trying a little bit harder if you're not already, just to see what you can gain in wisdom and in knowledge from the teachers around you. So especially in the field that you're, you know, interested in, just have casual conversations and ask some of the questions that you're thinking about and see what comes up. You know, you never know what can come out of a conversation. And I just think of it as a community that you can lean on while you're moving through. Of course, planning and preparation is really important in general. So just don't shy away from it. It's normal. Everybody does it. It's ideal. And your plans don't have to manifest the way that you write it down, but it's a good habit just to have, right? So imagine yourself in the next 3 years. What do you want to do? What do you want to achieve? What do you want to get done? What would be cool to do? And write it down and think about it, and then try to build a strategy to do it. And if none of those things happen, it's okay. But the point is just to constantly be thinking about how to apply yourself as you move along your path. And I'll say this just from experience, it doesn't always happen the way you planned. It actually rarely happens the way you planned. But for me anyway, the general goals have all remained consistent. And I've actually been really surprised at the ways that I've been able to achieve some of my life goals just because I was able to articulate them, right? So that's the first step. I will be biased really quickly and just say history for me is really useful. It's useful. I thought of, you know, I applied to undergrad, this is an aside, I applied to undergrad for theater. I don't know who in the space would remember, or anyway, I used to do theater. I used to be obsessed with drama, and I applied to undergrad to continue that. And within a semester, I decided it wasn't as useful for me as history, meaning theater is amazing and I can do it. I felt like I could do it all the time. I could do it anyway. It's an art craft. It's something that is a talent of mine. And if I wanted to write a piece of art and pursue it later, join a club, I could do that. Whereas history for me felt like very pressing as a career trajectory because of the work that I was interested to do. And that was because in America, I'm sure you've seen in the past, I've been gone, you know, 8 years now, almost, you know, or probably. And the point is, in that time, a lot has happened in society. A lot has happened with respect to the systems in this nation. And for me to make sense of them, for me literally to be able to walk around as a Black woman in this society, I felt like I needed to go to the history to make sense of all of this. Like, how on earth did we get to what we're seeing, good and bad? How did we get here? And so I took on history because it's useful to me. It really operates as a blueprint for some of the things that I've tried, some of the things that have succeeded and or failed, but mostly some of the patterns. You know, it just, that's why I think of history. So any ninth graders trying to, you know, think about why history, why would it be useful? It just helps to paint a picture, you know, nationally, globally, what was happening when this was happening, or where were these people and why was that, you know, helps you to kind of connect the dots. And then as an informed person, you just have agency. You can make decisions knowing kind of the reasons why some of the things that are happening are happening. Other people don't know all of those details. And I just find that it can be a little bit more complicated in your day-to-day life when you don't understand why things are happening. That just can be a bit challenging. So that's my little spiel to anybody thinking about history. That's why to go for history. And I already said, like, what makes a good kind of historian, or what are some tips for success in that field. But just to reiterate, good grades, consistent internships or programs outside of school to build your portfolio or resume, being a well-rounded person, right? So having a couple of things to, you know, to bring to the table, good networking and connectivity. And I want to just say, don't think of networking as like this really weird, you know, white collar, inaccessible experience. Networking is just conversations and community. And so for someone like me, who actually was networking, quote unquote, my entire life, got to college and then would be invited to do networking. And I was so afraid and so scared and thought it was like I couldn't do it. And it was so weird and it, you know, was daunting. Meanwhile, you know, when you strip it down, you're just talking to people and exchanging details and then recalling those people when, you know, you're looking for an opportunity, or, you know, if something pops up, you're like, oh yeah, that person, maybe I should reach out to them because they did that thing, you know. So I kind of just want to bring it down. But that it's a huge skill to have. And it's an important resource at the end of the day. You know, it helps to know people around. Confidence. So confidence is also like, can be taboo. I'm not saying to be the center of attention and to be this, you know, loud. That's not what I'm talking about. When I mean have confidence, I mean work hard to know who you are, work hard to know what you want, and work hard to know what you bring to the table, what you offer. So if someone asks you those questions, try to have the answers, because everybody can answer that question. I believe firmly that everybody has gifts, everybody has talents, everybody has something particular about them, and everybody has something that they can contribute no matter what. And so that's what makes any experience colorful, and that's what makes any collaboration colorful, is all the different people bringing their different stuff, but we all have it. And I think in high school, and when you're going through development, one of the hardest things is to know who you are and to know what you bring and to believe that you have something to bring, you know, but you do. I did, whether I knew it or not. Lean on your, you know, mentors and your peers and your family and your educators. They'll all remind you of those things. If you're not sure, they can help to clarify what those things are, but it's good to know what they are. And I said preparation already. And the last thing is research, writing, reading, you know, critical thinking. I want to talk really quickly about critical thinking. Critical thinking, what is critical thinking? You know, some people might think of like skepticism as like the constant questioning of everything around you. That can be a lot. Critical thinking is simply challenging the ideas that are presented around you, asking questions, being curious, poking a little bit deeper, right? So when you receive information, not immediately absorbing it. You might absorb it later, but first question it. You know, have a conversation about it, ask around, nuance your kind of your ideas. That's critical thinking. But that is a huge deal in tertiary education. And I think it's a huge deal in life, just to be an aware person, So I've said a lot. I want to leave, like, not leave you, but kind of stop my little spiel with a couple of like words of advice. I would say you have to know your why. So seriously, if you don't remember anything else that I've said, because I was talking a lot, that's okay. But just remember this, like, know your why, know why you do what you do. Of course, until high school, it's kind of like, you know, we're in school because we have to be. That's fair. That's real. You go to school because you have to, right? But the things that you're doing are speaking to the things that you like. They're speaking to the things that you don't like. And you're growing to know where your passions are, actually. And so the point is, when this is all said and done and you then choose to go to college or choose a specific job or choose to do whatever, you know, start a business or, you know, whatever you choose to do, know why you're doing it, right? Like, spend some time investigating why you want to do that or why you want to pursue that, because when things get really hard, which happens, and I'm sorry to say, I know high school for me was the hardest thing ever until college, you know, and then until now adulthood and post-grad. So in the moment, things get really, 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 really difficult. And when you add personal experiences and you add now a global pandemic and add, sometimes you can lose sight of why you're doing anything, you know, which happens to the best of us. But my point is, if you know why, you'll be grounded and you can make it through anything, seriously. So my undergraduate experience was really hard because I'm an overachiever and I probably put way too much on my plate for no reason. All that to say, I got through it because I knew why I was doing it. I knew why I was there. And so on the harder days when I'm like sleep deprived or I miss my family or whatever the case, I could push through because I knew what I was doing this thing for. Okay, so really, really get to know yourself and try to figure that out and then hold on to it, you know, draw it, put pictures to it, write, put words to it, affirm yourself, but stick to that thing, okay? Because we all have a thing. Secondly, if you can have fun, also, please have fun. Like, life can feel really serious and stressful. It doesn't have to be. And again, if you're doing something that you like, make the most of it, you know? And so, for example, you know, I'm now studying again for another 6 years, okay? And it's because I love it. No one forced me to now apply to this program and do it again. And I almost refuse to be bogged down by it because this is my passion again. So if you can have fun, do it. Enjoy your studies, enjoy your peers, enjoy your teachers, like, make the most of it while it's happening. Be present, you know, don't get too far ahead in the details. Like, life is happening in the now, so try to be there, try to live there, okay? And the last thing, cut yourself slack. So I know that I just piled on a million things to do and a million things that are important, but at the end of the day, like, you're a person, you're a human, right? And so everybody has needs, everybody has limits, everybody has boundaries. Respect those, because you can't overextend, you know, you can't do more than you can do. You can't do more than your best also. So take a deep breath, like, do your best and then forget the rest. And that was a rhyme, but that anyway. Yeah, so do what you love, have fun. I want to say center health. That's kind of the conclusion of that last point. Center your health, right? Like, you're not a robot, even though sometimes these places and these things make us feel like we should be a robot, and, you know, but you're not. And don't try to be, don't think you have to be. Like, center your peace, center your joy, center your health, and ask for help. I'll say that again slowly. Ask for help. No one can do these things alone, and we shouldn't. So that probably isn't, I probably should, like, stress that more, seriously. None of this we can do alone. Like no one can do these things alone. No successful person, quote unquote, did it alone. So like, I think it's a myth that we should, and we try to, and it's just a wrong approach. Like embrace your people, embrace your community, embrace the resources, ask for help, and then receive the help, you know, and don't be shy about that, because you need it. You need it, we need it, I need it. I mean, again, I'm the product of like a network of people that I can't even count, you know, but I needed all the support I got, and I need all the support that I get. And so, you know, I just am all community oriented these days, and I really don't shy away from it. And if I feel too proud, I'll swallow that pride and ask for help, because it's normal and it's okay. I feel like I'm gonna stop there. I know there's like a Q&A and people can ask me more pointed questions, but you know, yeah, I'll just stop there.
Thank you so much, Maya. What wise words. Wow. Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much. That's stunning, and some really good life lessons or advice that you have shared with us. So we've got one question so far. Please can I ask the audience to type in the live event Q&A, any questions that you have for Maya. So one question that I have for you, Maya, when was your ta-da moment when it came to history? Can you just explain that sort of light bulb moment where history made sense, where you felt, wow, this is a subject or a field that really inspires you, it makes a difference, and so on?
Yes. So I think I had a couple ta-da moments, but there was one. I want to just say again, because I'm like all Crawford, I can do that because it's sincere. I had a history teacher when I was in the 6th grade. I was 12 years old. An English teacher and a history teacher, both who like combined made me decide that I was going to be a teacher, because they did such a good job teaching me. I was like, they're doing a great job. I mean, I was such a weird kid. I would just sit in class and think about like, oh, I would do that differently, or that was done really well. And these two teachers just were brilliant in every way. And so that was one of the first moments, because I was like, whatever they're doing, I want to do it. Fast forward to college. No, I'll say also high school. I was taught by Mr. LaRue, who some of you know. Most of you probably know anyway. He was like, wow, that class was incredible for me. And so that was another moment where I was like, this is the way my brain works, like the things that I'm interested in, the things like, again, connecting real life scenarios to paths, right? So even growing up in, you know, post-apartheid South Africa, as a foreigner, but nonetheless, right, growing up and trying to make sense of some of the things that we're seeing, you know, like how could Crawford even be possible as a concept, as such a melting pot institution, and all the color and nuance? How could an American be in a real kind of South African class and not at the American institution, you know, whatever, like making sense of all the things that I was seeing. And, you know, that it helped in that way. But my real light bulb moment, wow, was the fall of 2014 when I started college. I arrived to America like 2 days before school, and then started school. And it was like jet lag, and my body was adjusting and all this stuff. Anyway, and so I thought, I want to take classes to catch up American history, like African American history. So I grew up in South Africa, so we learned about some things in like the civil rights movement and some things in American history, but I felt like there were a lot of gaps. So I wanted to catch up. And I remember I was in a Martin Luther King class. The class was called Martin Luther King, and it was about, you know, the civil rights movement and his role and his kind of perspectives and his growing ideas, etc. And some of you may know, but anyway, you know, there was the Selma, you know, all the events that happened at Selma and Birmingham. Okay, and so these are places, Mississippi, where things were happening in, I think, 63, 65, and I was learning about these events in class on TV, you know, watching clips of Selma and Birmingham. And then we had Ferguson, Missouri, happening in real life in 2014 on TV, and the images were the same. So if you don't know about all the events, it's okay. You can research that on your own. But the visual imagery of cars on fire, protests in the street, you know, property being destroyed in protests, police brutality, and 63, 65, and then 2014 was when I was like, okay, boom. So how could that even be possible, right? And why is that possible? And why is it probable in some senses? Like, what are the patterns that are happening all of these decades later, in the ways that people respond to the things that they're experiencing, in the ways that the government would repress, right, in certain situations. So I was like so overwhelmed, but that was when I was like, okay, I have to do this. I have to keep doing this. I have to keep digging. I have to keep learning, and then I can use, again, the blueprint for what has happened to color what is happening. And I'll tell you, it's now 2021, okay, and it's still useful for me. It's still useful for me.
Thank you so much, Maya. So a question from Anonymous. What made Michigan your uni of choice for postgrad? So what made you decide to go to the University of Michigan?
Okay, so I'll try to keep this as short as I can. There's so many reasons why I'm at the University of Michigan, but it's very simply, superficially anyway, it's a brilliant institution. It's like the #1 public university in the US. And the history program specifically is super vibrant and kind of known for the ways that it is interdisciplinary in nature. So my history undergraduate degree, history with a capital H, like in the discipline, can sometimes feel pretty rigid because it's just very particular and it's renowned for that particularity. When you deviate, it's kind of like it's hard for those deviations to sometimes be respected as history or recognized as history traditionally, right? But because of my my life story and the nature of my interests, I'm very interdisciplinary, right? I'm interested in some sociological issues, philosophical issues, anthropological, just in the way that I think about stuff, it ebbs and flows. And Michigan is known for that. I mean, their history department encourages you to kind of straddle different disciplines. Like, we're required to have a cognate, which is another field that can work simultaneously with your research. So mine, for example, might be law. It could be sociology. It could be another, a whole nother discipline, but you take courses in that field in order to expand and kind of complicate your history degree. So that's one reason, just on paper, I mean, and it's incredible. Secondly, the department was just really, really warm with me during my acceptance and during my offer season. I mean, the sincerity with which they approached me and kind of got to know me, and the celebrations that they, kind of showered around me, made me feel really, really, really special and excited. And I knew it was a perfect match. And the third reason, which probably has a lot more weight than its ranking, is the fact that my father went here for undergrad, and my grandmother, my late grandmother, Dr. Niara Sudarkasa, taught here for like 17 years in her career. So she was a professor of anthropology, and it had like an Afro, Pan-Africanist kind of focus. She studied in a lot of West African countries, and so straddling the continents in her own right. And she taught here. So, to walk the halls, I haven't gotten to the building yet, but to walk the halls where she taught, where she had an office, and where my dad also did his undergrad, and by the way, was also a history major, to kind of be the third generation of Sudarkasas coming through the University of Michigan also feels really special. I feel right at home. We also have, I'm in my family's house right now. We have family members in the area who are taking good care of me. So I am like absolutely where I'm supposed to be.
Oh, that's stunning. We're so happy. You look so happy, and I'm so glad you found your niche, Maya. So this is just a comment from one of the audience members. Just want to say, Maya, we are 50 something and in absolute awe of you and your amazing wisdom and pure light. What an absolute joy to listen to you. May you travel well, young woman. You are awesome.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So I don't know who that's from. Thank you sincerely. That is like really, really, really kind and generous, and it means a lot to me. Thank you.
So you're making a difference, Maya. I know you can't see the audience, but just know that you're really touching us. Yeah. So next question, why did you decide to go overseas for uni?
Okay, so for me, that's a good question. It was kind of natural for me and my family because I was born in Silver Spring, Maryland, and I belong to an African American family, and all of our extended family live in America. So my immediate family, my father, my mother, and my siblings, you know, were living in South Africa, growing up in South Africa, having a great time in Johannesburg. But it was kind of like homecoming almost to go and finish your studies in America, and kind of like it was our ticket to go back home, you know, like of course we could have literally gone, you know, at any time, but this was really the path to get back to the States and to build our lives. And it's not, again, not to say that American institutions are better than South African institutions at all, because UCT, Wits, like I said, all these, you know, UJ, all these schools are competitive in their own right. I think for me, I just felt so detached from my people, from African American people, and from my literal family, that I thought I better just give it a try and then see what I can do later. And if I, you know, was interested, and if I am interested in the future to come back, I know that I could pursue that and figure that out. But so going home, you know, it was bigger than school. There was a lot of weight to it. And, you know, I've also traveled, like, you know, I was lucky to study abroad in France because I did French also at Crawford. Shout out to Miss Sally Corin. I studied abroad in Paris, and for the same reason, I told myself, like, I don't know that I can see myself here long term, because we, like African American people, and yeah, the people I belong to in my family, again, are not there, right? So it just was challenging, I think, for me to do that, all that I was doing, and grow in all the ways that I was growing it, but yet be so detached from the communities that I identify with most, you know, kind of immediately. Yeah, but again, I did consider going to UCT. I had friends who went there. I have friends who went to all kinds of schools, Stellies, UJ, you know, Wits, all the others, like, you know, Pretoria, like all kinds of schools. So it could have been, you know, in another life, I could have been still down there with y'all.
We wish you were still here with us, Maya, but I'm really glad that you are so successful where you are. Next question. Has the increased levels of political polarization in the United States impacted on the ability of American historians to remain impartial?
Wow, what a question.
Would you like me to repeat it again, or you?
Sure, yeah, can you do it one more time?
Okay. Has the increased levels of political polarization in the United States impacted on the ability of American historians to remain impartial?
Yeah, okay, so that's a brilliant question. I talk about polarization daily, actually, or I think about it daily anyway, because it's, oh man, it's so hard. And it's also, I think, in some ways a missed opportunity. I think, of course, everybody's entitled to their opinion, and I respect the opinions of everyone, even in the extreme. It's difficult sometimes, but everyone is entitled to their opinion. And yet, I really don't believe that there is opportunities for productive conversation and illumination, and again, challenging the challenge of ideas. And then on the deepest level, like space for connection and like a shared humanity across difference. I mean, I really feel like that can't happen when you have polarization, because what polarization does is creates a distrust, creates a chasm between people, and it's impossible to connect, because it's like people don't even want to hear what the other people have to say. So I think sincerely there is a political polarization in America. It seems to be growing minute by minute. And as far as history is concerned, this might be a bit taboo to say or to feel, but the idea that historians are objective is a problem, because as a historian, you're a person, and whether you want to or not, whether you plan to or not, you are bringing biases, perspectives, experiences at the least, into your work. And so you're writing. The stories you're telling, because that's all that we really are, storytellers. The stories that you're telling, the stories that you're interested to tell are colored by a set of values that you have. And so, yes, as far as the polarization, it is increasingly difficult to straddle a middle ground and to kind of operate in the middle of a space, especially when the stakes feel so high. I think right now it feels really important to have a side. That's what it feels like. It's like pick a side or else, that's what it feels like here. So I think as a professional, in any sense, to have a public opinion about the things that are happening in society, it feels increasingly important to pick a side and to fight that side. But I think, again, following your own, your own stories, it's, you're going to lean where you lean. That is a fact. But yes, it probably is harder to play some kind of a middle ground. But again, I don't even think that's natural all the time. I know that historians are expected to present the facts and to tell the story and to relay the truth, but that truth is already going to be different depending on the historian themselves. And so I think the ways that we have to approach it is to be aware of our biases, aware of our prejudices, aware of our understandings, and tell the story, but then own the fact that it is colored by the person that we are telling that story. I don't even claim to be objective. It's like it's a really hard thing to do. So I don't know if I've answered the question. The answer is yes, because again, the stakes feel high. So the way that you tell the story sometimes feels like life or death, if that makes sense. It feels like you really have to tell a particular story in order to, kind of support a specific cause. And so when you do that, it's hard to introduce the side of the other. It's hard to counteract your own points. It's hard to nuance your argument. But that's important in the work of the historian. I just was bringing up the idea that in my own opinion, I feel like at the end of the day, no matter how good a job we feel we've done to be as objective as possible, it can't quite be 100% objective, because we're bringing stakes to the work ourselves. Like, why are we interested in telling a story in the first place? Why are we interested in telling it the way that we want to? Why have we curated our bibliography and our research in a specific way? All those choices have to do with the writer. Okay, so I'll stop there.
Lovely. So Maya, last question to you. How has your knowledge and education of the history of South Africa inspired you and assisted you in your studies?
Okay, so I think for one, there was no shortage of education on the history of South Africa, the apartheid regime for one. There was no shortage of knowledge and history and coloration of that story. And so for me, that was huge. Like, you can't get past history living in South Africa. Whether you're like more inclined to pursue it is another story. But everybody, as far as my generation is concerned, we are hip to what happened. We understand, I feel like, the complexities of it all, because it was constantly introduced every year that I was in school. I was learning more and more and building on the story, and then going to the museums, and it was personal, and it was with the schools, So I feel like that already built a bit of historian in me. Like, what, you know, I remember going to the Sammy Marks Museum when I was like 10 or something. So going on these excursions and going to see these things and reading about this stuff constantly already introduced a level of awareness to history in South Africa. And it's so important. And then it was so useful. Again, it was so important and useful for me to make sense of the country I was living in, and the society I was living in, the friends that I was making, and the places I was going, the languages that were all around, and, you know, everything was like that. That was really critical. So that, for one, of course, helped me with my studies and everything. And I also will say, I think, like, the importance of knowing South African history for the identity, for the national identity these days, in this kind of democratic, what was it, like after the democracy, you know, so post 94, like in this now, however many decades, like it's important for the identity of the country to reckon with that history. That over here in the United States is the battle, I think, that we are continuing to fight. Is like, I want our national identity to depend on a knowledge of our history, because the history is so long and so rich and so relevant that it's almost like, to deny it, you know, quote unquote, in whatever way, really, it just feels like, of course, an injustice, but really a missed opportunity again to move not beyond it, but to position it, to use it again, to transform, you know, cultures, and to grow from it, to heal from it. Really, this is all about healing, like to heal from it. And so I won't romanticize South Africa, because I know that there are challenges there, and I hold space for the challenges that every nation has to grow through. But again, growing there, being naturalized there, and being socialized there, it wasn't a conversation, right? Like, reckoning with the history of the country. There's no debate about the importance of knowing what happened, knowing why it happened, knowing how it was overcome, quote unquote, and knowing the path forward, right? And the identity that exists as a result of it. That's clear, in my opinion. That was clear. So keeping that in mind, it gives me something to look forward to, something to work towards, because that is the goal. You know, like Germany, who also has made a national identity out of reckoning with their history. It's like, to be in Germany now, to be a German now, it seems, is to know about the Holocaust and to understand and respect the ways in which that history was, you know, anyway, you know, qualify it however, horrendous is what I just would say, you know, like, and how it has now been overcome and memorialized though throughout the space. So you can't forget what happened. It's not just to throw it in the trash and move on. It's to constantly remember, but then to constantly live in the space of moving on, getting better, growing and healing. And so that's being achieved, in my opinion, in South Africa in certain ways, and it's being achieved in places like Germany. And then the last thing I'll say, I am interested in restorative justice. It was mentioned early in the intro, but restorative justice is the idea to transform the punitive model, basically, that shows up in schooling and that shows up in prison. So in school, you know, criminalization in America is kind of taught, it's kind of bred. And then, of course, the prison industrial complex is where that thrives, right? And restorative justice is interested in overcoming those things. And actually, in the case studies, the South African Truth and Reconciliation Commission is an example that's lifted up internationally as a wonderful example of restorative justice, in the way that they were able to overcome the punitive model when they were reckoning at the end of the apartheid regime. So of course, TRC had its, you know, it has its things, and so that's that. But at the end of the day, you know, here's a country that I grew up in, amazing, that is an international example for the kind of model that we are trying to institute and grow as a movement in America today. You know, it's like you all in that way were ahead. So I think of so many things in my experience, and I'm tying it all together, and I'm trying to talk about it now. And it's just like, it's so vivid and so rich, the ways in which my upbringing at Crawford in South Africa, as a budding historian, as a budding educator, and just a person, a Black woman, like all those things coming together have made my journey, you know, that much clearer, that much richer. And so I just rely on all of those experiences. These questions are awesome. I just want to say that these questions are awesome.
Well, we've got 3 more that have come in. So you thought it was the last one. Okay, next question, Maya. Do you see yourself going into the field as a tertiary educator or something like a high school educator?
So I think I'm gonna do tertiary education. I think I'm gonna be a professor, and the reason is because I just worked with City Year Washington DC as a 8th grade English language arts institutor, partner teacher. So I taught 8th grade English, and it was just really hard. I mean, English is amazing. I can do English, you know, and I had the history stuff. And so it was like, I could work it out. And also, of course, 8th grade, I could handle 8th grade. Let's just say that. But I will say this, K through 12, which in America is kindergarten through 12th grade. So basically, you know, what would be primary school, pre-primary school, primary school, and then high school, that development period in education is really important, I think, and there's so many other things at play. So meaning when you show up in the 8th grade and you just want to teach your, your book and whatever and move on, there's so much more happening in the experience of that student with development, with puberty, with like literally their brain, you know, and then when you go younger than that, it's almost more potent. I feel like when I think about the teachers who were teaching me at 10 years old, still could reach me as the teachers who were teaching me at 18 years old could reach me. And it wasn't just because they're all good teachers and they're all passionate about education. It's also because the nuance of the people that they're teaching and the level, or the kids, right, that they're teaching, being able to connect at that level. I felt unprepared to communicate in an effective way with students who were not my peers, because I think I've gotten used to teaching and guiding people who are my peers, right? Like, so it's funny, when I was in the 8th grade, I wanted to teach 8th grade. And when I got to the 12th grade, I wanted to teach the 12th grade. And then when I got to college, I was like, I have to teach college. So now I'm in postgrad, maybe I'll, so the point is, like, as I elevate, I realize like my reach, my ability to connect is with people who are at my level. I'm just more effective at an older age. So I could teach, I have the skills to teach K through 12, but I feel like I just don't underestimate the importance of the training that you need in order to teach at the right age. Because my fear would be that I just am talking like this, you know, and it can be, sometimes it's too elevated. I mean, sometimes it's just not appropriate, right, quote unquote, for the specific age. So I had a hard time because I was like, am I doing this right? You know, is this okay? Can I talk this way? Is it the right language? I was just kind of questioning myself in a way that I don't when I'm at the tertiary level.
Thank you. So Ms. Perkis, she's our principal at Crawford International Center. She has a message for you and a question. Hi Maya, how awesome to see you again. How did you find your niche and place at school and in the world, creating your own light and story when you are part of such an amazing family? Siblings often struggle to find their own voice. So being having your siblings and so on, how did you find your light, your voice?
Hi, Ms. Perkis. It's great to hear from you. I can't wait. Also, I can't wait to see everybody at Santon. I'm coming. I don't know when the pandemic allows me. But to answer your question, that's a great question. Anybody who has siblings understands the ways that competition sometimes shows up, and you can be discouraged, especially when you have brilliant, amazing siblings like I do. However, because of schools like Crawford and my own parents and my own family and community, we were each individually kind of nurtured, encouraged, inspired, and supported to find our own thing. So how did I find it? I was like pushed to. It was kind of like not non-negotiable in a way, because they knew, again, the way that I kind of spoke before, I really know that to be successful, quote unquote, you really need to find that thing that you love, because you're not going to be better at anything else. You know, you might be multi-talented, and I am multi-talented, thankfully. You know, I'm blessed to be multi-talented, but I'm not better at anything than this. Like, this is the best thing I think that I can do, because I enjoy it. I love it. So all that to say, growing up, we did compete in the way that we were all expected to be excellent, and even at Crawford, excellence is the standard. So everybody is like being encouraged and expected to be excellent. So you're competing, and it's competitive. But we didn't let it kind of tear us down or discourage us, or I just couldn't let it consume me. I just had to drive. And fortunately, my siblings were determined to be different from each other. So that's also something that some of y'all might relate to. It's also really hard to do something that another sibling is doing. So fortunately, I'm not working in the shadow of any of my siblings. I am the historian. There is no other. My siblings, we have multiple skill sets that overlap. We all were artistic and are artistic. We all are articulate and can write and read and express ourselves. We all, dabble with languages. But again, I am fluent in French, and I studied abroad, and that's my thing. So I kind of just followed the things that spoke to me. And in the case that they do overlap, which from some of my siblings, they do, 3 of my siblings all play guitar, for example, and are self-taught guitarists, which is really awesome. But they don't, in that case, they don't have to compete with that, because that's just something they love to do, that when they come together, they can play together. That it's like, you just have to get past the point where you're measuring yourself to your peers or anyone else in the world. Just go your lane, go your journey, and kind of mind your business. I mean, that sounds crude, but it's like, I just mind my business, and the things that speak to me are what make me light up, are what make me excel, are what make me stand out. And again, if any of them overlap with my siblings, it's like happenstance. It's just because of coincidence. But yeah, we were able to kind of push away from each other in a certain way. Like, none of us wanted particularly to do what the other was doing, and it was for this reason, I think, so we could have our own space and our own niche. And because, again, Crawford, like, my educators and my community were like, do your thing and do it well. By the time I got to college, again, where you are, it's independent, and post-grad especially, it's like independent study. You become in some cases, you're the only person doing that thing. So to answer this question, I was the only historian that I knew, in my friend group, in my peers. There were like no other history majors that I knew. Seriously, all my friends were poli-sci, med, pre-med, econ, other stuff, right? Sociology, all kinds of other things. I was the only historian, but I didn't let it discourage me, because it's almost as if it was like, this is what I've been doing my whole life. It's like, just do my stuff, do what I like, and meet people where you meet them. So I don't compete with others. I stopped competing with others since I was 13, and I used to run athletics, run track. I stopped competing with other people. I just kind of compete with myself and make sure that I'm doing my best at all times. And it has freed me from a lot of, I think, that competition that might have shown up in my family and beyond.
It looks like it is the last question coming up, Maya. Should a person choose a subject because it's useful to his or her career? So our grade 9's obviously thinking about this. So do you choose a subject because it will be useful for your career?
So I think the easiest answer is yes, because you're trying to build the foundation for a set of knowledge and skills that you will use when you become that thing. So that's yes, that's the simple answer. The more complicated answer is there's more than one way to get to your destination. So, I'm a history major, and that was, again, a bachelor's degree in tertiary education. that in somebody's mind could be, you know, the be all end all of like that experience. But I could start talking to y'all today. I could go do law. I could go do something else. I could go do film. I could still go do something. I could be a chef if I wanted to, you know. So don't feel discouraged if you choose something that you like. If you choose something that you're inspired to do, that makes you feel happy, that also you can excel at, right? Because you can't justify getting C's in the class that you need for the degree, or getting A's, right? A pluses, and being joyful and excited about this other class that may or may not like directly connect. I just am saying there's more than one way to make a pie, you know, and so in this case, don't feel bogged down about having a specific trajectory. But I will say sometimes, yes, it counts. If you need the specific course to do the specific thing, then just kind of do it. Specifically, you know, in the STEM field, so anything like economics, and then also like pre-med, I think is a little more rigid. There's kind of a path you have to go. So yeah, you're building skills and stuff. But the humanities, I think that's what I'm getting to. The humanities, I think there's a little more room for ebb and flow. It's not always kind of cut and set in stone. So do the research. You know, if the program requires something, then you got to do it. But if they're more fluid and more open, then take the opportunity to like spread your wings and try different stuff, you know. But again, you can go all the way through a bachelor's degree and change your mind or change your direction depending on the kind of direction you are going. So I hope that answers the question.
Thank you, Maya. You've answered all the questions, and we can't wait to see you at the college. Please come and visit us. You are an amazing young lady, and we are so, so proud of you. And we'd love to touch base with you in maybe a year's time to see what else you have accomplished. And again, thank you for spending this time with us and just giving back. I think it's that giving back to Crawford that is what a lot of our students do, and really appreciate your time, your energy, your passion, and your words of wisdom. So really appreciate that. I mean, you've been speaking for an hour now, so you must be exhausted. I don't know if those energy levels sort of get lower ever, but we really appreciate you.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much. I just want to say I feel energized. I mean, talking about all this stuff has just reminded me how much I love it and how grateful I am to be a part of this community. So seriously, from the bottom of my heart, it's a pleasure. I'll do whatever I can to be engaged and to support the community. And I would be happy to come back. And of course, I look forward to coming there in person and kind of chopping it up with some of my teachers eventually. I wanted to say to the students really quickly, hang in there, like you got it. It's gonna all work out. You know, look at me, like it just happens. So you'll be where you are, you know, someday, and you'll look back and be doing this kind of same exercise and just be smiling like, wow, how did it all kind of pan together? But take it a moment at a time. Take care of yourself. Stay motivated in the best way that you can. But yeah, have fun. Be young. Don't overthink it and overdo it. It's all gonna work out. Okay. Thank you all so much.
Thank you so much, Maya, and have a fabulous evening. Thank you for joining us. I'd like to bye-bye. Thank you so much to our audience and for joining us. This was hugely worthwhile, especially if you're considering the humanities. And again, thank you so much, Maya, for joining us, and have a great evening. Goodbye, everybody.